fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And it is officially April.
April! You love
better,
it when I do
It was better
that.
than March. It's got several syllables. It's better than March.
March was like, March!
Very anticlimactic. It just doesn't quite have that je ne sais quoi that you're looking for, you know? Anyway, it's officially the month of April, which obviously, as usual over here, means that we need a new theme because it's the beginning of a new month.
Yay!
So for the month of April, we're going to be talking about and covering everything Americana. For anybody who's like, what the fuck is that?
It's a good question.
No,
really.
but it's true.
And that's what we're getting into this month.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to be talking about it. Basically, okay, so Merriam-Webster, I'm just going to give everybody like a really vague definition. The definition that's up basically on Merriam-Webster's website is materials concerning or characteristic of America, its civilization, or its culture. So obviously that's a really broad kind of overview, but I feel like Americana in general, whether you're talking about film or books or music or anything in that, or even just like general like sort of socio-cultural things.
Yeah, like when you say Americana, like I think of like cars, like, you know, OG cars.
I think of cars. I think of really particular types of music,
like country music,
and like bluegrass and blues and things like that.
Yeah.
I think of a lot of things like along those lines, and I think of, I don't know, like older style, almost like dusty American highways, like, you know, like the really long ones that run through several states and things like that.
Totally.
Like a Route 66 type of thing, like very ingrained within the culture. And there are also a lot of, you know, practices, like, you know, sort of like traditions and things like that you probably won't find in any other part of the world, for instance. Like those things are always very like Americana.
Yeah, you think old Hollywood, right?
Yeah. You can see like the darker kind of aspects of it, but also the glitz and glam aspect of it too. Just these things that you won't find in any other place in the world.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But given that broad definition, of course, to your point, the cultural
aspects of it, if that makes sense.
Anything to do with their history, with their, you know, culture.
Yes, exactly.
Which then covers a broad
spectrum.
Of anything, really.
And I think that as we kind of progress through the month of April and we talk about a couple of movies, I find our choices of film are pretty interesting. They're very different from one another.
They're also good this
They're
month.
very good. They're both good. Yes, this is true. We don't have to get too upset this month about it. So if anybody hates when we talk about really bad movies, you're welcome. I don't know. So yeah, and I think that even just like based on our topics and based on our films, which like I said, these are two vastly different movies that I think fall into the category of Americana, but in very different ways.
Yes.
It kind of, I think you'll get a bit of a better idea of like how broad the definition kind of is, and maybe we'll narrow things down a little bit more as we go.
Yep.
But just to, you know,
also, we're Canadian, so we really apologize if we're getting this wrong.
Yeah, like, look, I wouldn't necessarily say that we have like the most knowledge with regards to this kind of a theme, but it is something like, you know, no matter what or how you feel about things in general, like America is one of like the biggest, most well-known countries in the world.
You think of the American dream, right? You think of what it represents. It represents the possibility of making something,
achieving success
of yourself.
You know, that's it, in your personal life and your like work life, all those kinds of things.
Picket fence.
Yeah, that's it, all that kind of stuff. And I do think that the American dream has shifted quite a bit in more recent times, obviously. But yeah, the more classic interpretation of it is definitely that. So that's just to give kind of an overview, a little bit of kind of what we'll be talking about a little bit throughout the course of the month. But to kick everything off, we decided to take a look at like a more recent film adaptation. So I'll just give like a spoiler alert ahead of time if you happen to have not seen it or you're not aware of the story. Just be aware of that. We're going to be talking through the film, so there you go. But this month we are talking about the 2023 adaptation of The Color Purple.
Oh, Miss Celie!
You must ain't got no kinfolk around these parts.
All I had was my sister. She was the only one ever loved me.
I'm gonna hold my head up. I'm gonna put my shoulders back. It's time for you to see the world.
There's gonna be some changes made.
Put it on. This ain't me. Hush. We need to look like we belong. Let's see this smile and color.
So if you've never heard of this story at all, it's based on the original novel written by an author by the name of Alice Walker, which I believe was published in 1982, originally made into a film in 1985 initially, and also this is the second film adaptation, but this adaptation is also confusing. It's also an adaptation of the stage musical that was made post-film, basically. So the film came out in 1985, and then after that, there was a stage musical that was produced.
And then this is based on the stage musical.
And then this is based on the stage musical, while also technically being based on like the novel and the original story as well. Confusing, but there you go. That's basically what it is. So yeah, it is obviously, yes, this is a film, but it's a musical. So just be aware of that if you're going to go into it, if you hate musicals or something. Although honestly, this one's really good. So.
It is. I mean, to be fair, we didn't watch this together, but I was texting Megan going, oh, this is a whole ass musical.
Yeah, Shireen went in totally blind.
I had no idea what this was about.
I've seen the original film, so I knew like what the story was and everything. No, I've never seen the musical adaptation of it, so this was like a new version of it for me. But outside of that, yeah, I knew what the original story basically was.
I did not.
Yeah,
shockingly, like obviously you've seen the title when you go into a bookstore, but never watched the movie. I don't know how this happened. Had no idea what the story was about, so I went in completely blind and was like by the end sobbing.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, what is this movie?
Yeah. It can be a really pleasant surprise, even if you're like sad or like you have like an emotional reaction to it. I find it's fun sometimes.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's fun sometimes to go into something with no real working knowledge of a story, just because you can just be really pleasantly surprised by something, by like a story when you're watching a film. So that's kind of fun. So the Color Purple right now, as we're recording, is sitting at a 7.10 out of 7 out of 10, out on IMDb, and 82% on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'd give it like a little bit more. I can understand that. Don't get me wrong, it's long.
It is long.
It does.
I had to like I fast forwarded through some of the.
Yeah, like you do like. Don't get me wrong, like you do have to be kind of committed to watching the whole thing. It's not that it really drags at any point because all aspects of the story are important.
Yeah,
but yeah, definitely after a while you're like, wow, okay, this is a long film, and it is.
Yeah, and very detailed.
Very detailed. There's a lot that goes into it. So the film, so basically the story kicks off in 1909. The film takes place in Georgia. So deep south, and a lot of that at that time and now as well, there are a lot of people of color who live in the southern part of the United States. That's just what it is. In 1909, there are two teenage sisters named Celie and Nettie Harris, I believe. Is that their last name? Yeah. So they live in a remote part of Georgia with their shitty father, who's horrible and abusive and disgusting. And
Celie is pregnant.
Yes, Celie is pregnant at the time that the story begins. I'm going to give a few trigger warnings, I think, for this movie in general and the story in general. So trigger warning for abuse and like domestic violence throughout the course of the story. Trigger warning for sexual assault, incest. Well, incest, but not really. It's not confusing, actually. But I'll explain when we get there. But the impression that we're given at the beginning of the story, nevertheless, and just like that's it. So a lot of things like that, substance abuse. There are a lot of aspects of the story that are quite difficult, and you're like, is this a musical? And it is, and it still pulls it off anyway, despite like the very heavy topics.
Very much.
It still does a good job of it. So Celie and Nettie are that's like teenagers. Celie's pregnant at the beginning of the story. We are given to understand very quickly that this is her second pregnancy, unfortunately, at the hands of her father. Ugh. Gross.
And both times he takes the babies away from her.
Yeah. Obviously, they dream of getting away. So their mom passed away several years earlier, and we're given to understand that after she died, their father started sexually abusing her. Yeah. And so this has resulted in 2 pregnancies. She gives birth to her second, who's a boy. She's already had a girl. She gives birth to her second right at the beginning of the film. She names him Adam. And I believe the little girl's name is Olivia.
Yeah.
So yeah, he takes the the children away, and we don't know what happens to them until like a little bit later on into the story. At the same time, so they have to work in the family shop that they own, that they believe that their father owns, which is like a
general store.
A general store, like a grocery general store type of situation. Celie has to work all day, I guess partially because she's pregnant as well. I'm sure that was his excuse. Nettie's the only one who goes to school of the two of them, and I believe that she's the one who's taught Celie like how to read and write properly.
Yeah, and there's an understanding or an assumption that Nettie is going to school because their dad wants her to become a school teacher and bring in money.
Yeah. To the family in general, and she would still be stuck with them anyway, but that's what it is. Obviously, they want to, they do dream about like kind of getting away from everything, particularly Nettie. She's very strong-willed. Celie is definitely the more like sort of the quieter of the two.
I mean, she's been clearly abused a lot more than her sister.
Yes, it's very clear that she's also, I get the feeling to a degree, kind of quietly taking the brunt of the abuse so that Nettie won't have to deal with it.
Yes, and I think that it's almost like this like unspoken transaction between the two of them where it's like Nettie will look after Celie in her own way, like teach her to read, to write, and they have this hope that potentially Nettie could take them away. Nettie tries to keep Celie very cheerful. She tries to cheer her up. She tries to show her the positives in life, give her some fun.
Yeah.
But Celie is very she's into herself. Just
she's been beaten down.
She's been beaten down so much, and like I was saying to you. Initially you think you're led to believe that it's because it's like a lack of intelligence on her part. That is not the case.
No, it's not that at all. That's not true at all. It's just a full like amount of isolation and sheltering that she's been forced into since she was a small child. Yeah, is my understanding. We're introduced to a character named Albert Johnson, but we only know him as Mr. for the majority of the story. Mr. takes a liking. He's much older, but he takes a liking to Nettie. However, since their father has ambitions for Nettie to actually work outside of the home, when Mr. approaches him and asks to marry Nettie, he's like, nah, you can have Celie. And they're really shitty. They call her ugly because she's like the quote-unquote ugly sister of the two. They're really shitty about the way that she looks, which is also not true, but anyway. And it's just gross. It's just like a really derogatory way of speaking about something. Like they act like she's a thing and not a person. It's like, it's disgusting.
And there's like this really heartbreaking moment where like he just walks in, tells her, pack up your things, you're going to marry Mr.
Yeah.
And Mr. is riding on a horse through town.
Oh,
and Celie is following him. On foot. And I think she's barefoot.
I don't remember.
I might be wrong, but anyway, she's on foot, and it's just really heartbreaking.
Yeah, because she's trying to just like keep up with him.
Yeah.
He's annoyed because he wanted to marry the other one. He ignores the fact that she exists, but he brings her into the house, which is disgusting. Mr. has a really severe alcohol abuse issue.
We're led to understand that he was married.
Yes, he was, because he has three children.
He's got 3 children. Yeah.
And his wife, I believe, has also died.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, again, sometime earlier. And he doesn't pay attention to his kids. He leaves them to be like feral to a degree. They they run around and do nothing all day. Yeah. So anyway, he brings Celie in, and she also, as a child herself, I think she's maybe supposed to be like 15 or something, is expected to take care of these 3 children and run this house properly and clean up.
Not much younger than her.
No, that's it. Nettie shows up. They go through, they live together for a period of time, obviously. It was a time where we're talking 1917.
I think so, yeah.
Was it 1917 by this point? I forget. Or no, I'm sorry. We're still in 1909.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So Mr. obviously takes whatever he wants in the marital bed because, of course, men at that time would have automatically assumed that they were entitled to do whatever they wanted to their spouse. And marital rape was not a thing that you would think of at that time. It wasn't considered anything that was real. So, Celie does what she can to run the house and kind of clean up and take care of the kids and cook and do these things. Mr. is physically abusive towards her.
And verbally.
And verbally abusive towards her as well. If he's not ignoring her, he's abusing her. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, it's really awful.
It's gross. Yeah, it's
horrible.
She
she turns more and more into herself. So like this abused child from the beginning is getting like worse and worse. And then her sister shows up.
Yes, because she can she shows up and tells Celie, like, after you left, their dad tried to start molesting her as well. And so she was like, I cannot live there anymore. So Mr.'s like, fine, whatever. She can live here, but she has to help. Yeah. Basically. And I don't want her to, like, eat too much food or do this or do that. And that's pretty much what their agreement is. He's, of course, seems like he's okay, quote unquote, with this at first, but it's really because he wants to have sex with her. Yeah. And he tries to one evening, which leads to this really massive confrontation because Nettie's like, absolutely not. No, she rebuffs his advances. And then he kicks her out of the house and tells her to get lost. And her and Celie are separated from each other in this really, like, really upsetting, like, really sad scene.
And like, you know, their parting words are that, you know, Nettie promises Celie that she will write to her
every day.
Yeah. And that's it. And Celie is then beaten again. And then we fast forward into 1917.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. So we get into 1917. Celie's obviously still taking care of everything around the house. And Mr's a farmer. Just for it comes up in several scenes.
I think they mention at some point because they keep showing the image of the house, and at first I was like shocked because it's clearly like a plantation or of some sort, or it looks like one of these like houses.
There's a conversation that happens between him and his father,
and his father mentions that like he took the house back, and it was like
he was like, oh, your grandfather slaved on this land or something.
Exactly, like it was like the land where their ancestors were slaves or something. And so it does really have that look about it. And so he's like he owns the land, he's a farmer on the land, and they've got quite like a big plot of land with a swamp as
it goes all the way down to the water and everything. It's impressively big. Honestly, it's quite large. So in 1917, that's it. Celie's still dealing, unfortunately, with abuse and with having to run the house. Mr's oldest son, named Harpo, is getting married to this woman named Sophia. Sophia's a fucking icon.
She's icon.
She is very much not a woman of that period. And what I mean by that is that she's incredibly strong-willed. She is brash. She is outspoken. She's loud about any opinion that she has about things.
She does not give a crap what men think of her.
She doesn't care what people think of her.
Care what the norms are or the expectations are of her as a woman. She does not care.
No, she does not at all. She does what she wants when she wants, basically. And Harpo is like head over fucking heels for her.
Oh, he loves her.
He's obsessed with her. Great. It's really funny. So, at first, like, Mr's like, oh my God, you're not marrying this woman. Like, she's ridiculous.
Because she's pregnant.
Yes, because she's pregnant. And of course, like, he does the whole, like, oh, how do you know it's his baby kind of thing. And she's like, okay, shut up. He's the only person I'm having sex with. It's definitely his baby. They do get married.
They do. And Harpo builds a house for them on the plot of land that was given to him by his grandfather.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So he builds a house for them and is like, Dad, I don't care what you say. We're getting married. I'm in love with her. That's what it is.
And they do. And she has the baby. And she has her baby. And they live in domestic bliss for a hot minute.
Yeah. And her and Celie do form a friendship as well.
Yeah, but Celie's looking at this dynamic of, like, Harpo, who, like, Sophia says to Harpo when Celie goes over, make us tea and, tend to the baby.
Yeah.
And he's like, how am I supposed to do that? And she goes, I don't know. You figure it out. So like, Celie is looking at this and
she doesn't understand it because she's never seen a relationship like this before. So when Harpo comes to her with, like, sort of like his concerns where he's like, I can't control her. Like, I don't know what to do. And
she doesn't tend to me the way you tend to.
No, that's it, And so unfortunately, Celie, again, in like a level of naivete that the character maintains throughout most of the course of the story, like almost the entire film, basically, in that naivete, and like, not that it's a great thing, but she's kind of like, I don't know, maybe you should hit her, basically, because
beat her.
Yeah, because she's like, my husband beats me and I definitely do everything that he wants me to do. So
oh God, it's so good.
He tries, I guess, one time to do this, to hit her, and you better believe that she turns around and kicks the shit out of him right back. It's really great. And again, because Sophia's a very strong-willed woman, she's like, she understands like where he came to this sort of idea from, like where this came from based on obviously his dad and Celie and all of this stuff. And, she says, she's like, still I really love him. Like, I really love him. He's basically the love of my life. But she's like, no one hits me ever. So she leaves with the baby. She leaves him.
And she does confront Celie. She says, why did you tell him to hit me? And Celie, you know, what I always find really interesting about Celie is that throughout she's very naive. She's very, like, product of her abuse. Yeah. But she's also very emotionally intelligent. So she's able to understand the reason why she does a lot of things. And so her immediate answer is, because I'm jealous of you.
Yes. And she's like, I'm jealous of like what you're able to do, kind of thing, and like how you carry yourself and all of those things. And she's really, she is. She's just jealous of it, and that's what she admits. So Sophia leaves for a period of time, and then when we, sort of our next kind of scene basically is everybody starts there's a whole song, a literal song and dance. Obviously, it's a musical about a woman named Shug Avery who's coming to town. Yes. And so Shug is a jazz singer, like a famous jazz singer in the area.
Did she say jazz or blues?
I think it's jazz.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So she's like a famous jazz singer in the area who travels around to different parts of, I think mostly the South, like the South in general, but like, Georgia and stuff. She goes to Tennessee at one point, Mississippi, like different places. She comes back to town. Actually, her parents are the town's reverend and his wife. Yeah. And she's obviously like she's
like the town pride.
Yeah. And they don't really like pay her, like they try to ignore it because they think that she's like, like a harlot, and she's gone off and done all of these things that she shouldn't be doing. So,
she's not a woman of God anymore.
Yeah, she's a loose woman basically. And, everybody's like, oh, a loose woman. Oh, but it's so funny because of course she's very sexually free, which again at the time, would have been something that would have been viewed negatively in a lot of ways. But because of that, all the men want her and all the women hate her. And she's hot. So
to boot.
Yeah. So that, helps. So she's played by Taraji P. Henson, actually, who, by the way, hasn't aged in like the last 15 years. I don't understand.
She looks awesome.
She's 53 years old.
She does not look 53.
I know.
She looks like she's like 37.
I thought she was like in her late 30s. Yeah. Anyway. So she comes to town to perform. Since Sophia and Harpo have split up, he's turned the house that he had built out near the water into a juke joint, so like a little club bar situation. And he's dating this girl named Mary Agnes, but everybody calls her Squeak.
Yeah, because she's a singer.
She's demure and small, and I think she doesn't say very much all the time. So yeah, and she's played by an R&B singer, something Her. Yeah. How do you guys? I'm sorry, I don't know which one it is.
Not that cool.
Yeah, I don't know, but anyway, that's who she's played by. So, Shug goes to sing, that Harpo asks her, like, can you sing? And he's like, and, Squeak's trying to be like, I sing too. Like, I'm bringing in money. I'm doing this and doing that. But of course, Shug Avery is very well known. So she brings like a ton of people into the place. On that evening, Sophia shows up with her new husband. What's his name?
I feel like it starts with a B.
Yeah. I forget. Whatever. It's fine.
But don't, like, also before all this because this is the opening night of this club, and they're kind of posting all the posters all over the place because Shug is going to be singing. And Celie and Shug have kind of struck up this friendship.
Yes, because Shug used to have like a whole thing going on with Mister, and she still kind of does.
But I think she doesn't. Like, I think Shug knows who Mister is, and she's not that interested in him, like, other than like physical stuff.
Yeah, just from time to time to somebody to like keep your bed warm type of thing is more her vibe. But he's
like full on, like, he's in love with her.
Yeah, no, he's like obsessed with her for sure, because he's obsessed with the idea of being able to land like a woman like her, basically. That's really what he's into, and he has disagreements with his father about this as well.
Yeah, and I believe, and I'm not sure. It kind of seems like his dad didn't want them to be together.
No, I don't think
so. And maybe put the kibosh on it when they were young.
Yeah.
And it seems like, Mister and his dad are always arguing over
they
this.
don't. They have a very terrible, very tenuous relationship. So she, that's it, sings at the club. Sophia and her new husband are there. A fight breaks out because Harpo asks Sophia to dance, and then Squeak tries to cut in, and it turns into a literal brawl. It's insane. And the whole place goes crazy. And Suge's like, time to go. Yeah. And she just pieces out, and Celie wants to go with her. And she's like, no, I can't right now, like next time. And Suge's dealing with her own kinds of things as well, with not having her parents' acceptance. And also she has a lot of like alcohol abuse issues as well for quite a while throughout the story. So, she's like, please, 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 kind of like, like come with, like, I want to go with you and all that kind of stuff. And Suge's like, no, I don't think we're going to be able to do that this time. But when all of this is going on that evening, or not long after anyway, while Mr. is passed out at the bar, like his son's bar, the mailman shows up, and Celie had never been able to pick up any of the mail because she's always waiting for letters from Nettie, always. And Mr. would never let her take the mail. He would always rush over and get the mail from the mailman.
Dick.
Yeah, I know he's a piece of shit.
Like, it's like you abuse her. You don't really seem to like her all that much. Like, why heap her letters?
I don't know why. Yeah, like, why, God, why put in so much effort? Yeah. Anyway, so, but in the morning, he's passed out at the bar, and Suge runs into the mailman and takes the mail from him. And then she looks down and sees, oh, look, a letter from Nettie for Celie, and runs upstairs.
I think she's mentioned to Suge that like she's got a sister, and she's got 2 kids. Like she's always talking about her sister and her 2 children, and how much she loves them, and
that she has no one now.
She has no one now.
Yeah, exactly. Because anybody that she did have was taken away from her. Yeah. And so of course when this happens, Suge's also like, hey, there must be more letters here. I'm sure that there are, because they read one of the letters, and it's they do find like a whole giant pile of them, and it's revealed that yes, Nettie has been writing, I believe, every week since she left. Yes. She's been sending her letters.
And she says in her letter, like, I guess he's still keeping the letters away from you.
Yeah, like she knows. Like she's aware, obviously, because she knew what he was like. So she, basically we learn a lot through the course of the letters, was that after Nettie was kicked out of the farmhouse and she left, she wound up in town, and she wound up working for getting a job with like a local reverend and his wife, and they told her that they were actually heading off to Africa to work as missionaries, to do some missionary work there, and she decided to go with them because turns out this particular reverend and his wife both adopted both of the babies that Celie had, so they have Olivia and Adam. And she's like, okay, I'm going to come and raise my niece and nephew with you, basically. So she left with them.
In that moment, I'm like, oh!
Well, it's really nice because they got to have, like, I'm sure that the reverend and his wife were lovely, but it's nice that they got to have, like, a blood relative with them as well. So that's what she does. So they went off to Africa, and they were actually there for years, like a number of years. I think we jump ahead at this point to, like, 1930. We jump ahead to like 1930 at this point, so like, we have this whole revelation, and then we're jumping ahead in time again, and this is when, unfortunately, like, Sophia has her whole arc that she has to deal with. So she's out.
Also heartbreaking.
Yeah, she's out with her kids, getting ice cream, and the mayor's wife
there too.
Yes, and Celie's with them as well, with the husband and everything. Yeah, they're all out getting ice cream, and she runs into the mayor of the town and his wife. They're white, just for context, because it means something. Who, of course, the wife starts being like, oh, your children are so clean and so well behaved, and she's just like, yeah, great, thanks, because we're all like disgusting barbarians.
Don't forget, this is Sophia, who is like working real hard to
not to say anything
at this point.
And so she's like, yeah, thanks. And the woman's like, oh, you should come be my maid, because of course I take a look at your children, and I'm sure that means that you could do that. And she's like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And then this woman makes unpleasant comments about, like, I'm basically like, I'm really nice to black people. Everybody says so. It's so gross.
It's so condescending. It's so nasty.
Oh, it's so gross.
This is one of the very few moments in this movie where there's like an interaction, like where there are like white people in the scene.
Yeah,
there's an interaction.
This might be the only time, honestly.
Aside from the mailman, I think.
Yeah, and that's it. Exactly. That's it. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable.
It's just awful. And then she keeps asking her. And then at one point, Sophia, who's Sophia, turns around and says, hell no.
No.
I do not want to be your maid.
Also, that Hell No song is my favorite song in the movie. It's so good.
Yeah, she tells her hell no. That's like Sophia's like signature, like, catchphrase.
Yes.
Hell no. And
the mayor
gets mad. He comes over.
Oh, God.
And then Sophia punches the mayor in the face.
Yeah.
And then she starts shouting over to her husband and to Celie, get my children out of here.
Yeah, take the kids away. Don't
Take
let them
the
see
kids.
this. Don't let them see this.
Don't let them see this. And then sure enough, she gets arrested.
Yeah.
And she gets put in a cell. And then it's kind of a little confusing about, like, how long, like, how much time has passed. But we're then shown, you know, Sophia basically broken. Her spirit is broken. She's in this cell. And Celie is visiting her. And she brings her Thanksgiving dinner. And we're led to understand that Celie has been visiting her every week when she's allowed to visit. And Sophia is not eating. She's not talking. She's just crying, and it's awful.
Oh, it's so sad.
It's awful.
It's so sad. The Sophia is played by an actress named Danielle Brooks.
She was in Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, she was in Orange is the New Black. Yeah. And I believe, she received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress.
And she deserved it because she was phenomenal in this movie.
Oh, so good.
And
so then we jump
6 years.
6 years. It's 1943 now, by the way.
Isn't it 1946?
No, that's at the end of the movie.
Oh, right, okay. So 1943, she's let out of prison. It's been 6 years that she's been in that cell.
And she's forced to go fucking work for the mayor's wife anyway as her maid, and it's so annoying.
It's disgusting. And then the mayor's wife is standing there going, like, don't worry, like, I'll get you, like, kind of where you need to be kind of thing.
Like, as a human being, and you're like, what?
And, like, again, Sophia's just, like, a shell of herself.
Yeah.
And Celie goes up to her and says, I knitted this for you, like a cardigan. And so I think we just kind of jump ahead a little bit again.
Yeah, well, we jump ahead. It's Easter. It's an Easter dinner, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, and this is a whole confrontation at the table. So everybody's there. It's been not too long, I think, that Sophia's back.
Yeah, because Sophia's been, like, let out now. So she's allowed, and it's fun because she's wearing the cardigan that Celie knitted for her.
It's so cute. So they're all at the table. Shug is there. She's married to someone now as well, so she's there with her husband. Mr. is there. Celie is there. Harpo is there with Sophia because you can tell he's been and Squeak. Because it's funny, but it's funny because you can tell that he's been making sure that Sophia is okay since she got out.
Well, also the understanding was that while Sophia was in prison, Squeak and Harpo were looking after
the kids,
all the kids.
I don't know where her husband went.
I had no idea.
I feel like that was like or maybe it was like a one-off line. Yeah. I was actually really confused about that. That's something that I didn't get answered that I would almost have to like look up to check. I don't know where the hell her husband went. It was weird because she has had 1 or 2 children with him as well. So
and he had 4 kids, and then she had the kid with Harpo.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I think they had like 6 kids in total, or 7 kids, or something.
Yeah, that's it. And Harpo and Squeak have been taking care of the kids.
Yeah,
so
that's
I don't
what they
know where
say.
this man went. He disappeared.
No,
I don't know. It's like maybe he fell to pieces after his wife was arrested and then didn't want to deal with
say
it.
That.
And he just didn't deal with it.
Sorry, they say that. They say Celie says it when she goes to visit Sophia. Oh. She says Harpo and Squeak have been looking after the kids because whatever her husband's name is, he has not been doing well since the incident.
Okay, all right. Yeah, fine. So, okay, there we go. That's that explanation. So, yeah, so it's 1943, and that's it. So they're all sitting at the table, and this is just Celie's breaking point at this point. So she has an entire confrontation with Mr. where she fully confronts him with regards to him having hidden all of Nettie's letters over the years. And she's like, get fucked, basically. Like, I'm not going to put up with any of this anymore. She nearly kills him at the table. She literally grabs her knife and is like about to kill him. And the others just stop her because they're like, it's not worth it. Don't do it, because she'll be arrested and most likely killed.
Yeah. And I like what triggers this is because Shug and her husband, they got there earlier that afternoon. Mr. didn't realize that Shug was married, and so he's very angry. And Shug says, well, we're gonna have to leave because we have to get back on the road, and we're taking Celie's
coming with us. It's about time she saw something like outside of here. She's coming with us.
And then he's like, no, she's not. And then Celie just fucking loses
her mind.
Like, wow.
She loses her mind. She loses her mind at him and his father, because his father also starts being like, control your woman.
Yeah.
So that's like its own thing. But anyway, that's it. So she loses it, and she does take off to Memphis with Shug and her husband, and she moves in with them.
And also this kind of, so again, Sophia has been like a shell of herself up until this moment, but Celie says something to him like, you're just like horse shit that belongs in the ground.
And she starts laughing.
And she just starts laughing, and she just comes back to herself.
And she's just, and like, she says to Celie too, she's like, you were the person who took care of me and came to see me the entire time that I was in prison. She did for 6 years. She went to see her. I think every week she was saying she went to see her. Yeah. And she was like, you're incredible. I love you. And she was just like, ooh, things are going to change around here because I am back to myself.
I am back to myself. And you're like, woohoo.
Yeah, it's great. So Celie takes off with Suge and her husband. They move to Memphis. She moves into their big, beautiful house that they have there. And then we jump ahead another 2 years to 1945 at that point, where they've been basically thriving, like doing really well. You can even tell that Suge is doing really well because she has been able to, I think, kick her drinking habit to a degree because
she's got like a record.
Yeah, she's like record being put out and stuff like that. And she basically dedicates it to Celie and like their friendship that they formed, which is really lovely too because there's such a dichotomy of different types of women.
Yeah.
But I think that it works so incredibly well because, you know, Suge met Celie and immediately, I think, felt like a certain amount of like sisterhood and kinship towards her and wanting to help her in some way. And for Celie, Suge is so fascinating because she's so unlike any other person that she's ever come across in her life, and was willing to speak to her plainly and expose her to new things that she just never experienced before in her life. And I think that, you know, that was like an endless sort of source of fascination for her as well. So they've just formed this really nice bond, which is great. So in 1945, Celie's given the news that her father's passed away, and she's like, okay. So she goes to the funeral, and everybody
in
like
their
Sophia
small town in Georgia.
They go back to the town in Georgia. She goes to the funeral, and Suge and Sophia and everything go with her to support her. His wife, because it turns out he'd married sometime in this interim. It's been like 30 odd years, right? Mm-hmm. So he'd married at some point in this interim. His wife speaks to her at the funeral and is like, can you come and meet me at the shop, like the general store that he owned? And she's like, okay, sure. So she goes there after the funeral, and this is where the wife reveals to her, actually, the store was never his. Mm-hmm. He was not your father, your biological father. He was your stepfather. Your father passed away a number of years ago, and your mother remarried him. And when she passed away, even though the store was their biological fathers, technically, and their mothers, their stepfather Alfonso, he just took over the store and kept running it, but basically pretended that it was his, but it was never in his name. Mm-hmm. And the deed automatically, upon technically both of their parents dying, so after their mom died, it should have transferred over to Celie and Nettie. Yeah. But of course, Alfonso didn't let that happen because he wanted to, you know, keep everything for himself, and they wouldn't have known any better. They were young. They were babies.
Well,
they had no idea.
They were children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So his wife was actually very kind.
Yeah,
she's very nice. She's like,
you can tell that she's been abused as well, and she
I'm
was
sure she
way
has.
younger.
Oh my god, yeah. She was younger than Celie and everything.
Yeah.
I was like, ew, that's gross. Anyway, she, you know, gives her the deed, and she's like, no, it's yours. She was like, you didn't know, eh? Like, you had no idea. She's like, yeah, no, it's yours. The store is yours. He's not your biological father, which, you know, it doesn't make the sexual assault or the rapes or anything like any better. However, it makes it, when I was, you know, when you're watching it, it does make me feel better because I'm like, oh good, I'm really glad that these lovely children that she had are not the product of incest. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. But like also like if you think about like the mental toll that probably had on Celie all these years, imagine. Like thinking that her father, like I don't even know if she thought about it that way, but like like that would have had its own toll.
I feel like as she got older, she probably had a better understanding of it. And at that time, it probably was like, that must have been, I can't even imagine what that would be like to deal with. So that's insane. So she takes the general store and she decides, and this is another like sort of metaphor for like breaking free of like the bonds that she's had her entire life. So she turns it in to a like a couture shop basically, or
but
like
they make pants for women.
They make pants for women, and it's called Celia's Fancy Pants, and it's so cute.
It's so cute. I love like, it. All these women are now coming from like far and wide to buy pants,
and she's got all these
had to
women
wear skirts and stuff.
And she's got all these women employed there and everything, and it's so like lovely and lively and colorful because she's always in very muted tones all the time, like grays and browns and like these really sort of like very muted, very quiet colors. And then of course when she starts this business, she's in red and green and these beautiful bright colors.
There's even like these sparkly like pants.
Yeah, that's it exactly. While all of this is going going on. When she left Mr. several years ago, probably about 10 years ago, she did curse him, and she actually did, it turns out, because basically what she was saying was, until you do right by me, like until you make things right with everything that you've done to me, everything that you think about, everything that you touch will turn to shit, basically.
It will crumble.
Yes.
And it did.
And it does, because the farm is like infested with insects and it's falling apart and everything, so he's not able to make enough money. He spirals further down into like a drunken stupor for a period of time. Harpo kind of tries to help him, but you can also tell he maintains a distance because he's like, nah, bitch, nah.
Yeah, Harpo's like, I got enough to deal with Sophia and Squeak at this point.
Well, it's weird. So I think at this point it's pretty clear that he and Sophia have officially reconciled and are back together. Yeah, and I think
Squeak is just completely out of the picture now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, she's around, but she's not, like, involved with him anymore. And I'm like, all right, whatever. If everybody's cool with it, that's fine.
Totally.
Anyway, so, you know, one night, and that's it, a drunken stupor, Mr., you know, is, like, out in one of his fields, which, again, has turned to total shit because of all of the infestations, and nothing can grow properly. So it's just this, you know, festering black pile at this point, because he's had to burn the crops several times.
Yeah.
He remembers Celie's curse, and he's like, I'm going to fix things. I'm going to do right by her. I'm going to fix this. And so it is actually a turning point for him. And it doesn't mean like you're going to love his character necessarily, although he is played by Coleman Domingo, who's like a really good actor.
Yeah,
he's great. If you guys have ever seen Euphoria, there's an episode of Euphoria that was like between seasons 1 and 2 where it's basically just like a dialogue filled episode between him and Rue in like a diner. And it's mostly focused on him and his story. Yeah. It's incredible. It's really sad. So good. Yeah. God, it's good. He's so fucking good in that show. Anyway, he has, that's it, like this moment of clarity. So he starts to clean up his act. What we realized, so she's like, you know, you like basically what she told him is you need to do right by me. So he receives in the mail a letter from Nettie, who doesn't necessarily know where Celie is living at this point. She's still in Africa. She has no idea. Yeah. And the letter indicates that because of, that's it, like British invasions and things like that, and all of the colonization that was taking place at that time, that
they're in danger, basically.
That's it. They had to leave the area and flee, and she was like, we're not going to have much of an option other than to come back to the States.
But you have to vouch for our citizenship.
Or we can't get in.
She's like, you're our only hope. Like,
and she's saying this to Celie. Like, she's writing to Celie.
But he's reading the letter, and so he decides, well, I'm going to do right by her.
I will fix it then. So he goes to the immigration office and asks, like, what can I do? You know, and the lawyer's like, he's like, even if you can vouch for them, like, it's going to cost several $100s to bring them back here, which, keep in mind, it's 1945.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. 1945, 1946 at this point. And so he's like, you know, at first he's like, okay, fine, thank you. But then he stops and he's like, I have land. If I sold some of my land, do you think I could get money for it? And the guy's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, that would go a long way to helping it. And so he does. He basically sponsors them to come back to the States. And by them, I mean Nettie and also Celie's 2 children, Olivia and Adam, and their kids. Yeah. Or at least one of them. I'm sorry.
I think Adam is married
and he has 2 children, I believe. Yeah. So she has grandchildren at this point. And he also goes to apologize to Celie. He buys sparkly pants, which made me laugh. And I almost tries to reconcile with her, and she just says to him, she's like, let's you and I just be friends. Yeah. Yeah, which is fine. Good, cool. So now hop ahead to a little bit later, because you have to understand that at this time travel would have been very slow. They would have come by boat, so it would have taken months for them to get back. Totally. So there's a whole big gathering in the community where they're having like a dinner and stuff like that, and then basically in that last scene, as a surprise, and you can tell other people know, like, yes, Mr. knew that this was happening because he was helping them come back, but like Suge knew, other people were aware, like Sophia knew, other people knew that this was happening. A car shows up, and Nettie gets out of the car, and Adam and Olivia and Adam's wife and his 2 kids are all there, so they're all able to like reunite right at the end of the movie, and they have this. Let's say, okay, so it's one of those things where, so that's basically like how it ends. They have like a final song, everybody's able to like reunite, and like it's really nice too, because you can tell that Nettie never stopped talking to them about their mother, because when they when they see her, they like hug her and they're like, you know, we love you and everything. I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it really goes to show that like Celie, even though in her perspective, like, you know, she was abused, she had this really awful life, but she brought so much to everyone else around her.
Yeah, that what were they going to do other than be like, talk about how wonderful she is, basically.
Right. And it's like she had this whole full life that she didn't even know about, basically.
Yeah.
And it's really heartbreaking because you're like, you're assuming that at this point, like, she would be older. I don't even know how old she would be.
I don't know. At least
not that old,
maybe
I
in
guess.
her 40s or something.
40s, 50s,
40s
maybe.
or 50s, maybe. Yeah.
So she's not that old, but it's like she's lost all these years with her sister, with her children, but she never stopped talking about them as well. Like,
no,
her
it's
whole
true.
life,
it's like Nettie and her kids, Nettie and her kids, Nettie and her kids. Yeah, it's true. It never really stops. So so they have this wonderful sort of full circle moment. And they're able to reconnect later in life, yes, but at least they're able to have like now a number of years with one another, which is really nice. And that's kind of like how everything wraps up. I'm really surprised. I don't know if it was marketing. I don't know if it was the timing of the film. This film came out right around Christmas in 2023.
It was like a quiet release. Yeah. Like, what happened with it?
Yeah, no, it's considered basically it didn't make very much money and stuff. Even though it was quite critically acclaimed. Like, critics said it was very good. Yeah. It was like very well regarded when it was released. And it's really too bad. So like, if you haven't watched it, I would recommend it. Yeah, because like I said, it's quite long, so we don't really have time to cover every aspect of it throughout the course of this. Like, there's no way. We haven't touched on a lot of like the nuance and like the specific scenes and pieces of dialogue that are really great and everything. And
like also like the great interaction and the focus on the characters and how they interact with each other without having like this overarching like other outside forces coming in.
Yeah, no.
It's really about the characters and their lives and how
their
they
lives
with
and their
other.
interaction. Yeah, no, it's true. There's so much less that's like touched upon, but it gives you like this wonderful, very, very like sort of, I don't know how to describe it. This like lovely story that's very focused on like these specific people in their lives at this time period. And it's just like a really nice story. And on top of that, also, since we haven't really touched on it, the costumes are great. The songs are fantastic. The vocal performances are incredible.
Yeah, because Fantasia Barrino plays Celie. I don't
Celie.
think we mentioned that.
No, I don't think we mentioned that.
What's her name? Ariel.
Oh yeah, Halle Bailey plays the young version of Nettie.
Yeah.
The younger version of Celie was really good as well. Like everybody was really great.
Yeah.
The like choreography is good. Like everything,
the makeup is good.
Yeah,
the sets are great.
Visually, like it's like a beautiful movie to watch. It's entertaining from start to finish. The songs are really great. So yeah, it's just overall, it's like it's a very incredibly well-rounded film in terms of how good it is from start to finish. Like the performances are good. Everything is good.
Go watch it.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. But if you have, you can let us know about that and also like how it compares for you anyway, to like a non-musical version. So like the original film and the novel and everything. You can let us know about that over on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at fullybookedca. And you can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.